Great. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. The topic is using LinkedIn for your job search. Job searching in today's online world means using resources including LinkedIn, and job seekers need to be savvy about this networking platform. This session will cover LinkedIn best practices, including creating a strong profile, optimizing for search, what information to include, developing a network, and guidelines for maximizing LinkedIn in your job search. And this program this week is led by Elizabeth Gross, who's a former marketing executive at Monster.com, and she is the owner of Job Search Divas. So all 30 of us, let's give a big virtual round of applause to Elizabeth for joining us this afternoon. And Elizabeth, you can take it away. Thanks so much.
Hello, everybody. So glad you could join us. Thank you for coming during this busy holiday week. As Robert said, my name is Elizabeth Gross, and I am the owner and head diva at Job Search Divas. My organization helps people with all the tools they need to have an effective and productive job search, from resume writing to LinkedIn profile development to cover letter templates and networking skills, putting together your job search strategy, and even rehearsing and preparing for job interviews. But today we are going to talk about LinkedIn. So Robert, I'm going to share my screen and give me a, oops, I need you to enable me to share my screen.
Oh boy, Elizabeth, what a mess I am. One second.
You know, I'm going to chalk it up to your illness.
There you go. So actually, Elizabeth, first I have to make you a co-host, which I failed to do. And then I have to spotlight you. And then I'm going to make you, give you superpowers to share your screen. All right, give it a shot now.
All right, here we go. Yeah, got it. Okay. And Robert, that looks good, right? You can see the presentation. Whoops.
That's correct.
A little bit ahead. Okay. All right. All right. So this is what we're talking about today. We are talking about using LinkedIn for your job search. And so let's get right into it. Let me make sure I have my, okay, here we go. Here's what we're going to talk about. We are going to talk about why LinkedIn is part of the platform for a productive job search. And why is LinkedIn important? Why is this an important part of your platform? The best practices for your LinkedIn profile. We're going to go into some detail about these. We're also going to cover some of the built-in tools that LinkedIn offers and setting up your job search. And then finally, we're going to wrap up and go over everything about all the tips for using LinkedIn for your job search. There will be plenty of time for Q&A at the end. I hope to leave about 15 minutes Q&A. But if during the presentation you're having trouble understanding something I'm saying, or you need additional clarification, you know, either put your question in the chat or raise your hand, and Robert will stop me and we'll move forward and answer your question. All right, so let's talk about this platform for a productive search and where LinkedIn falls into that. Both your resume and your LinkedIn profile are important. This is, you know, your resume really tells your professional story, and it represents you and your abilities in a concise and easy to read manner, right? But it's a little more formal. It uses the third person, and it uses short, concise language to tell the story of your career. But your resume and your LinkedIn need to hang together. With social media, this allows us a little more flexibility, and it allows us too to build in personality to the different ways we represent ourselves in social media. LinkedIn is a social media platform. We can use a more casual conversational language and telling the same story that your resume tells, but in a slightly different way. So it's a really kind of, these two elements, your resume and your LinkedIn, they need to hang together. And if you have any other questions about resume best practices, shoot me a message, email me. I'm always happy to answer any questions about resumes. But today we're talking about LinkedIn. Okay, so why is LinkedIn important? Well, it is the leading professional networking tool. We know that. It helps us really connect with people that we want to network with most effectively. It is the business platform of today's networking. Even if you're not looking for a job, people are posting thought leadership pieces, getting more visibility from a business standpoint on LinkedIn. There's lots of reasons why LinkedIn is important. But for us, since we're talking about job seeking, this really allows us to find and use our connections more effectively to help us during our job search. It also gives us additional visibility with our network. If we're liking things or we're commenting on things or even sharing pieces of information, that gives us great visibility with our network. We can use LinkedIn as a research tool to learn more about potential employers. And of course, we can search for jobs and apply using our profile, which is great. So there are a lot of reasons why LinkedIn is important, but here's the biggest one. Over 90% of people who are searching for talent, and when I say people, I mean recruiters, I mean hiring managers, I mean HR. So 90% of people searching for talent are vetting candidates on LinkedIn. So we want to make sure that your profile is structured and optimized as strongly as it can be so that you can capture some of that interest. Okay, so let's talk about some best practices for your LinkedIn profile. Yes, it can mirror your resume's information, but it also gives us the opportunity to add more personality. We can write some of the language in first person, which makes it feel more authentic and really much less stuffy and much less formal. We don't want to come off stuffy and formal in a social media environment. We want to be in line with what people expect on social media, which is definitely less formal. You can tell a more robust story about yourself. You can tell a multi-dimensional story because we've got all these abilities. We've got this ability on social media to share presentations or links to websites or articles or things that you might have been involved with. There's a lot of stuff that we can add there. Websites that you're a part of or presentations that you've done at work. You can also talk a little bit more about your personal side, your hobbies, your passions. There's a great quote that my friend Amanda Healy, who is a LinkedIn power user, says, and she says, your resume is what you do, but LinkedIn is why you do it. And I think that's kind of a neat way to frame the way we can think about both of those really important tools. Of course, we want to position our job skills, but who we are as a person. So this gives us the ability to do that. Okay, so let's take a look and we're going to go through, we'll use my profile as an example. We are going to go through and talk about what best practices are for your LinkedIn. So there's a lot of things that you want to make sure are part of your profile. You want this fully built out, and it's got to start with a headshot. What should your headshot look like? Well, it should not look like a picture of you from 20 years ago. And it should not look like a picture of you in some sort of group setting where you cut out the other person. This should be a picture that really captures who you are today. Professional, looking at the camera, preferably from, right below your shoulders to right above your head. This is a really good perspective to put in this frame that LinkedIn gives us. And the reason is we really want the attention to be on us, not on things that might be in the background or, things that are maybe part of what your outfit is, but just kind of keeping it really focused on us. And think about all the different ways that people access LinkedIn. We're looking at this image, which is from a desktop, but people also look at them on mobile devices. They look at LinkedIn on a tablet, and the rendering of that image of your headshot can get really small. So that's why we want to focus it more on your face and not so much on things in the background or more of your whole self. The background image is important. So the horizontal space behind your headshot, if anybody has the default in there, that looks like sort of a gray, contemporary sort of backdrop. That's just a default image that LinkedIn drops in there. You actually have the ability to edit that and make it something more personal about yourself. It could be something that you're passionate about. It could be something about your work. Maybe it's a place you love to travel to. Maybe it's a sports team that you're a fan of, or the city skyline for your favorite city, which in some of our cases is Boston, and somebody might have something else. But the point is, this is what I was talking about earlier with creating a more dynamic presence for ourselves. This gives another nod to, hey, who am I? What are the things that are important to me? Here's a way that you can add more personality. So in my case, this image is a picture from a vacation I was on out on the California coast. And this is off of the coast of Mendocino at the very early part of the morning, where the sun was just breaking over the mountain and just hitting these pieces of land out in the water called the headlands. So it's a beautiful shot that reminds me of a place that I had a really wonderful time at a really neat trip. And it's also neatly fits into LinkedIn's pixel size for that rectangle. So it works in a number of ways for me. Another thing that you want to make sure that you're optimizing on your profile, and this is really important in your header. See right underneath my name is the words job search strategist, resume writer, and head diva. This piece of information is called your headline. And this is the highest ranked piece of information in terms of search on your profile. So, we were talking earlier about 90% of people, vetting candidates on LinkedIn. You want to make sure that this headline really tells potential employers or people who are looking what it is that you have to offer. And so what this headline shouldn't be is it shouldn't be whatever your job title is, like manager of whatever. It should be what you have to offer. And if you've ever created a headline for your resume, if anyone's ever been involved with my resume workshop, we work a lot on creating headlines for your resume. This can be a similar bunch of information in this headline, but the idea is you want to pull together some descriptors of who you are as a professional and what it is that you offer, so that you can be found if someone's searching for, I'm going to make this up just for the purposes of our argument here. If they're looking for a project manager, you want to make sure project manager shows up in your headline. So give some thought to what you might include there, and know that you can also, I think you can kind of fill 2 lines of text. You don't want to, go overboard, but you have some room to write a little bit more than what I have written here. Another area that you want to make sure to take a look at is the skills area. This is something that we maybe don't look at so much on LinkedIn. And these skills, these skills also act as keywords for search. So LinkedIn allows you 50 entries in the skills section. And what you should make sure is, because this was an area that kind of was started a while ago on LinkedIn, you want to take a look at that and make sure those skills are the ones that you feel are the strongest representation of what you have to offer. Sometimes some things might have snuck in there over time that you're like, oh, that's not really my thing. You can edit that out. You can edit skills out. You can change the order of skills. All of this is part of what you have control over your profile. And so you should make sure that a really great technique here is, if you have a couple different jobs that you're interested in and you see that there are some keywords included in those job postings, and those keywords are things that you offer, you could add those into your skills section. But like I said, you have 50 different you have 50 there, you can add 50 skills. So you kind of want to make sure you're using what's most relevant, most important, and really most reflective about what you have to offer. Excuse me. Another area that LinkedIn sort of enables us to do is add recommendations. So getting recommendations and adding them to our profile, because this really helps, again, others know what it's like to work with you. And the importance of these is, this is these recommendations are from people that you have worked with that can really speak to your abilities. And maybe you worked on a project together, or maybe it was somebody that you worked for and were your boss, and they can really talk about how you led the team, or you really, took on more work than you should have because it was kind of above and beyond. So recommendations can be from coworkers, they can be from former coworkers, they can be from former bosses, they can be from colleagues, even people that you went to college with, if you had projects that you did together. They can really be from anyone, but it's really important to make sure you have these recommendations, because if someone's looking at your profile and your profile for a particular opportunity, and they're looking at this other person's profile, and they go through all the information in both of your profiles, and they decide, well, geez, these people have really similar experience. Like, who should I call? Should I call person A, or should I call person B for the interview? And person A has these recommendations that illustrate what it's like to work with them, and person B doesn't have the recommendations. I'm going to bet that person A gets the phone call, because it gives really another piece of insight into who you are and what you're like to work with. So get recommendations. They shouldn't be long, a paragraph in length. You have to go through LinkedIn's, you have to go through their platform to get the recommendations. You have to request the recommendation from somebody, and then they send it back to you, and you can edit it before it goes live. So you have the control over what gets posted, but you have to initiate the request through LinkedIn's platform. Another thing you can do on LinkedIn is, if you're actively job searching, is setting yourself as open for opportunities. And there's going to be instructions later on that illustrate how to do this, but you want to make sure that behind the scenes you've turned that function on, so that recruiters can tell that you are open to new opportunities. And there's even some data that you can fill in there that says more about what you're looking for. So it's important to do that if you're actively job searching. And even if you're currently working and actively job searching, this area, LinkedIn tells us that this setting yourself as open to opportunities is only visible to recruiters. And I'm not talking about that banner on your profile photo that says open to work. Obviously, that's visible to everybody, but that the open for opportunities is only visible in the recruiter view, and recruiters that are not affiliated with your current employer. So that's what LinkedIn tells us. We have to hope for the most part that they're right. You also can set up your profile. Well, you want to make sure, if you're not interested in sort of letting everybody know that you're making changes to your profile, you can go into your privacy settings and you can turn off notifications for a while you're working on updating your profile. And this might be a good idea if you kind of want to get everything up to speed before going back out there and doing any sort of more visible types of things on LinkedIn. And it also is important if you are currently working and you're, again, not anxious to share that you're job searching. Sometimes people kind of feel that when folks are updating their LinkedIn profile, they must be looking for a job. These days, you could be updating your LinkedIn profile for a lot of different reasons, because LinkedIn is more than just a place to search for a job, like we talked about before. The other thing, my other recommendation in terms of best practices when you're building out your profile, is you can keep it informal. You can write in the first person. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, because we want our personality to come across here on LinkedIn. We have our picture, we have our background image. So you can see in my profile, in the information that's below the message button, how I talk about myself in the first person. I talk about the fact that I've always had a passion for helping people, and it talks a little bit about my background, and I use I. So you can do that on LinkedIn. It is okay. And we already talked about this pro tip, your LinkedIn headline being similar to what's on your resume. You can also check out those job postings that you're interested in and think if there's other words that you should be including in your headline that are reflective of your skills as you see them represented in those job postings. So let's talk a little bit more about the best practices. This is the first impression. This is your header, just like mine. It's your first impression. It's where people get to see the picture of you, It's where they get to understand who you are from your headline. And also, it is where they get to learn just a little bit more about you. So think about the first impression when you're going into a job interview, how you want to make sure you look your best, you want to have a good appearance, and you want to make sure that all the parts and pieces of what you are presenting are put together. It's the same for LinkedIn. You want the first impression to be your strongest. So in this case, we know this former president of the United States has a great picture, right? Tells us who he is in the headline. Pretty strong. Obviously, that's if you're looking for a former president, this guy's going to come up. But look, he doesn't have a background image. So that would be kind of an area where he is not up to speed on his social media. But his headshot is natural and authentic. It's really very clear who he is, and that he has you notice in his about section, which is that area right below the follow button, that he has a very compelling quote there. So, another kind of way that he's representing who he is as a person. My pro tip here is you can actually add your LinkedIn URL to your other social media. So if you're very busy in other platforms like Instagram or Twitter, I don't know what's going to happen with Twitter, but if you're very active in those other platforms, you can integrate your LinkedIn URL to those other platforms so that everything's linked together and people can find you no matter where they're looking. As long as where they're finding you is something you consider professional. So let's talk about your profile's content. This is more about best practices. You can use a very similar format to what you use in your resume for the chronological experience section. Again, LinkedIn lets you apply for jobs using your profile or your resume. Why not have your profile fully built out so it tells that same strong story? Your chronological experience can be written out similar to what's in your resume, but again, think about as if you were sitting down for coffee with somebody and explaining what you did in each of your roles. So you might take that little bit more of a conversational tone than you do in your resume. You can still talk about what your successes are. You can still talk about the things that you've done in each of your roles that really made you a standout and made you, had more impact on the business that you worked for, but you're doing it in a little bit of a different tone. You also want to, of course, include your education, your volunteer activities. LinkedIn has made some changes to the platform, and there's a place now for you to include organizations you're part of in addition to volunteer activities. So that's a little bit different, those two things. It allows you to include publications. If you're someone that has published any work, there's a whole separate section for that in LinkedIn. There's also projects. So there's a lot of different areas that you can build out in your LinkedIn profile to help, again, build that more dynamic, sort of bigger presence for yourself. You want to make sure that you've reviewed your skills and that they compare favorably and accurately with what you're actually an expert at. And then it's telling that story about who you are today, not who you were maybe 5 years ago or even 10 or even 15. You want to make sure you've got those recommendations. You want to have, I would say, a good number to shoot for is have 2 to 3 recommendations that are current. So you might have some in your profile that go back a long way. LinkedIn came out in sometime in the 2006 timeframe, I think, or maybe a little bit earlier. So some of your recommendations, if you have existing ones, they might be quite old. It's a really good idea to have an updated couple recommendations that are from the current year in your profile, so that it's telling that, again, current story about yourself.
Mm.
Did someone have a question? No. Okay. Sometimes also it's hard to make sure that we have the company name, the company page chosen. So if you've got any companies in your LinkedIn profile where the icon is just a sort of a gray box, you want to go back in and see if you can find that organization's LinkedIn page. Couple reasons. again, it makes your profile appear fully built out. This is not only for companies that you've worked for in your professional life, but also academic institutions where you've taken courses or gotten your degree from, any professional development. Always connect to their LinkedIn page, because not only does that make your profile fully built out from a visual perspective, it connects you broader to the rest of the LinkedIn network. People go to the page for your academic institution and they see how many people are on LinkedIn. You're one of those people. So it just gives you more visibility and more connections throughout the LinkedIn platform and network when you have those pages connected to your profile. You also want to personalize your URL. And this is something that's really important, that you don't have a bunch of numbers and dashes at the end of your URL, because you want it to be very reflective of your name. You can use your URL in a lot of different places. We talked about including it in your other social media. You can use your LinkedIn URL on your resume, and having it be as close to your name as possible is ideal, so that if someone's looking for you on LinkedIn and they type in Elizabeth Gross, they want to find this Elizabeth Gross. So the instructions for doing that is on the tip sheet that that Robert is going to hand out in the chat at some point. My pro tip here is really about making sure your profile is fully built out. I know I'm sort of a broken record about that, but it indicates that you're engaged, and it really helps you promote yourself further, especially if you're job seeking. You want to make sure that you are presenting your best self. So let's talk about how to use LinkedIn's built-in tools. So there are some things that really are great features of LinkedIn. So once your profile is updated, make sure that you have set yourself as available for new opportunities. We talked about that before, and the instructions are on the tip sheet. Start following companies you're interested in or that you want to work for, so that you see their information coming up in your LinkedIn feed. You want to spend time every day on LinkedIn to kind of get a sense of what's going on out there, especially with people that you're following or companies that you're following or people that you're connected with. Having more information about what's going on out there in the professional world is a good thing, especially when you're searching for a job. You can adjust your privacy settings, which we talked about before, so that people are either seeing your updates or not seeing your updates. This again is on the tip sheet. And then there's a people also viewed setting. This is in the right-hand bar of your profile. And I advise disabling this. This is the instructions are on the tip sheet, because again, we really want someone coming to your profile, a potential employer, a recruiter, someone who's looking for new talent. We want them to really focus on you and not who else they could look at that's similar to you. So I advise disabling that setting, which is very easy to do, and it's on the tip sheet. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. Schedule some time for LinkedIn every day, even if it's kind of the first thing you do. You know, when you're getting ready and sitting down at your desk in the morning. If you're setting off on your job search and sitting down to think about what your activities are for the day, you could spend some time perusing LinkedIn, seeing what's going on, seeing what news has been posted since you last checked. You can search jobs, of course, but you can also research companies. You could write articles. You could share or comment on what other people are doing. It really, really, really gives you some great visibility to your network and to others even outside your network. So let's talk about setting up your job search, making sure you're using one of those tools that LinkedIn offers very effectively. And we're going to do this little exercise now. I'm going to show you on my LinkedIn, excuse me, on setting up job alerts. And so if you don't know how to do this, we're going to walk through it very quickly. But what this allows you to do is stay on top of new opportunities and be one of the first applicants to new postings, which is always a good thing. So I am going to switch over from the presentation to my LinkedIn profile. And then I'm going to share again the screen. Okay, here we go. Okay, Now this is funny because we just started talking about job alerts and someone has posted one in my feed, but this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. So this is a great little just serendipitous moment. This is a woman that I worked with on her resume and her LinkedIn. Her name's Michelle Purcell. She is an amazing executive producer for television programs. And she has posted a job alert, and see how much visibility this is getting. This is somebody else that she's connected with posting it to my feed so that it really is going in a lot of different directions, and it's actually getting a lot of visibility, which is really cool. Okay, but we are here to look at how to set up our own job alerts. So this, I just have to shut that off. Okay, here we go. Oops, oh, darn it. Sorry, I need to go back to, okay, here we go. Just a little, okay. So the first step is the briefcase icon here in the top nav. Clicking on that. Now we're going to set up a job alert. And we're going to be looking for, let's see, let's call a project manager. That's the job title you're looking for. You got to make sure you put in your location. So the project manager job search in Greater Boston came up with 17,000 results. Eesh, that's a little much. And you can see that some of the ones at the top are promoted, right? This means somebody at Project 202 paid to have this come up to the top of the search when someone types in project manager. Okay, that's fine. These might not be the kinds of companies I want to work for, but okay, that's where they are. But look at how many, I mean, so many, right? And then one of the things that I want you to do when you set up your job alert is think about whether or not you want to create filters so that if you're looking to be a project manager in Greater Boston, you don't have 17,000 results of things that might not necessarily be immediately relevant to you. So here's some filters you can set up. Do I want this job to be full-time, part-time, contract, temporary? Am I interested in volunteering for some reason? Or an internship? Let's just say we want a full-time role. Okay, that takes it down by 2,000 results. Let's say that we want a hybrid position. We would like it to be between work and in the office and home. So that takes it down by quite a few. And then we also want to go by experience level. Am I entry level? Am I early in my career? Am I an associate? Am I a little bit more mid-level in my career, or am I at the executive level here with director? And I would recommend, choosing a couple different ones. So executive and director, maybe associate and senior level. So you're getting more results. So let's see if we can, let's do these two. Okay, really takes it down quite a bit. That's fine. So now we've set up our job alert for project manager in Greater Boston. We've told the system that we want to be notified when there are jobs posted that meet our experience level criteria and that are full-time, offering a hybrid work. Now, is it going to be perfect? Probably not. But the idea is you're honing down the search to the opportunities that you're more interested in. This is about quality, not necessarily quantity. So you want to make sure that you're setting up these job alerts and also letting LinkedIn know how you want to be notified. Do you want to be notified by text that the new job is been posted? Do you want to be notified by email? Both, whatever. So when you've gone through this whole process and you've set up your job alert with all of these criteria that are important to you, here's the most important thing. You want to toggle this switch over here to the right. So now this is an official job alert. And if you want to manage your alerts, like I said, with, letting the system know how you want to be notified and how often, like, do you want something coming every day? Sometimes this can get a bit like clutter. in your inbox. So you kind of want to decide, like, how do I want to respond to these in the best way that I can? And the other thing to keep in mind about job alerts is if there are different levels of the position that you're looking for, you have to set up a job alert for every single one of those levels to make sure that you're capturing keywords. And also, if you're looking in more than one geographic area, you've got to set up a job alert in every single one of those areas. So that is my small tutorial on job alerts. And I'm going to go back to the presentation now. Let's see. She says.
And Elizabeth, we actually have a question from Laura.
Yes.
She asks, how do I set up a new job alert if I already have one? I hit jobs, job alert, and all I get is the screen with my existing one. So can you have more than one job alert at a time?
Oh, yes. Yes, you can. You have to, you probably have to go through that exercise that I just showed you and search for a new title. And that will bring up that whole screen that I just showed with the split screen with the results on one side. And so if you have one job alert set up for, project associate, and you want to set up one for project manager, you go through that same exercise and it'll allow you to set up another one. Also, if you go into your alerts, and you want to make some changes, you can manage those as well. Okay, back to the presentation. Oops. I have lost the screen. Hold on one second. Sorry about this, guys. Robert, I've lost the camera.
Well, we can see you, Elizabeth.
I know, that's terrible.
Is it minimized somewhere?
It might be. This has never happened before. Okay, hold on. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to come back in.
Okay, that's
I'm
fine.
so sorry. Here it is.
Yeah, so you still haven't left yet, Elizabeth. I don't know.
Here it is. Never mind.
well,
Never mind.
Okay.
Did I get it? No. Jeez.
Well, actually, so you did change your
View.
You did yeah, you hid your view, so we saw, a screenshot of you.
Okay. All right. I'll be right
But
back.
that's progress.
I'm sorry. I don't know what's happening. Here it is.
That's okay.
Here it is. Sorry, I got it. Okay. Just got a multiple screen thing going on. Okay. You can see this now, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Whew. Okay, so that was job alerts. Yes, you can set up multiples. You do have to go through that process every single time. And then don't forget to manage your alerts. You may have some ones set up from a while ago that you don't want anymore. So I would make sure you take a look at what you've got in there to make sure they're most relevant. You also want to review your connections. Who are the people that you're connected with and where are they now? A lot of times when we connected with people a while ago, we might have been working together and then maybe we went in different ways with our career. You can review your connections and really kind of check in and see where people are at now and decide, are these people that I still want to be connected with? But also, maybe it's time to reach out and do some networking with some folks that you haven't talked to in a while. That's starting to use your network and making sure you're using it effectively. This would also go for in a case where you say you see a job that you're really interested in on LinkedIn, it'll show you how you're connected to people that work there. And if you've got first level connections, that could be a really terrific way in. And so LinkedIn is really handy for showing us how we're connected at different opportunities. And you can also research and add recruiters. Recruiters are an important tool in your job search. And if you're looking to kind of get get those relationships with recruiters going, you can search them on LinkedIn and see what kind of specialties they offer, if they're in your industry, or if there's other people that you know in your industry who are using recruiters. You can use LinkedIn to research them and see if you can find out more information about them. So here's my pro tip. 70% of LinkedIn members find a job through a mutual connection. Now, this is LinkedIn telling us this. They are the ones who are citing this statistic. But it makes sense, right? If you've got connections and that might help you get the door open to a job interview, you should leverage as much as you can that LinkedIn has to offer in that area. Okay. So let's wrap up and talk about what you're going to do when you leave this session. You're going to make sure your resume and your LinkedIn profile really hang together. You're going to fully build out your profile, making it the best it can be, making sure you've got all of those details covered, that there aren't any blanks, that there's plenty of information so that someone that finds you can really understand what it is that you have to offer. Take a fresh look at all the content, especially some of those sections you haven't looked at in a while. We talked about the skills section. We talked about some of those new sections that LinkedIn offers, projects and organizations. You want to make sure that if you've got relevant content that you include them in those sections. If you don't have any recent recommendations, get some. I always say a good rule of thumb is if you want 3 new recommendations, ask 5 people, because 2 people are going to be too busy or going to forget, or they're not going to get back to you. So ask for more and be happy with getting 2 to 3. Review your connections, use your network, reach out to people. Now's a great time to have a conversation and talk about what's been going on with them, how they like working at their company. Maybe they have advice for you. Use your network and use LinkedIn to connect with your network. And stay positive. Your hard work will pay off. So that is all I have for today. And we are finishing with plenty of time for questions. So I welcome any questions that that folks might have. Robert?
Yeah, so Elizabeth, let's take the written questions first. So actually circling back to the job alerts, what if somebody only wanted remote? Would they then just not select a location?
So one of those in the job alerts filters, one
Right.
of those filters was job type.
Yep.
And it's in person, fully remote, or hybrid were the 3 choices. So if you only wanted something fully remote, you could choose fully remote.
Yeah, and then just not bother with the location option, tab, whatever you call it.
I'm not sure how that works. You might end up with a few too many results if you use location as the United States of America. That could be kind of overwhelming, but you could try that as your first step, see how many results you get, and then you could still hone it down a bit further. Even though companies allow remote work, and maybe some of you have experienced this, oftentimes they cannot support employees that work in states that they don't have offices. And some of that is changing, some of it's not. So it may be important for them to know where your location is in order to be able to show you a job posting. They may say, well, we can't show this job posting to people in Montana because we actually don't have any offices in Montana. But we could show it to people in New Jersey because we have an office in New Jersey. So I would still think about including your location, because that may come into play even with remote work.
So Cindy asks, and I think you kind of touched on this at the very end, but Cindy asks, should I reach out to people to see if they can write recommendations? And how would you go about doing that?
Great question. So I like to reach out first in the way that I normally chat with that person. Maybe I text with them, or maybe I am more of an email communicator with them. And I would say, hey, I'm updating my my LinkedIn profile, and would be really grateful if you would write me a recommendation. And so you might give them kind of the heads up in this outside of LinkedIn way. And then if they say, yeah, sure, of course, then you have to go through LinkedIn go to their page. This is just one way to do it. You go to the person's page. So let's say I want Robert to write me a recommendation. I have to go on LinkedIn to Robert's page, and then in his header, there will be a drop-down menu that says that, and one of the choices is request a recommendation. So what happens is LinkedIn sends Robert a message once you requested that recommendation. Robert writes the recommendation in LinkedIn's system, and then it gets sent back to you, and you can review it, and then you can post it to your profile. So it's all through the platform, but there's a lot of control on your side. So if for some reason, you didn't like Robert's recommendation, or you were like, not going to post it, you don't have to post it.
And Cindy has another question. She asks, do you recommend reaching out to a hiring manager at a company that you're interested in working at?
So if you can see the hiring manager's information and you have the ability to do so, absolutely. It's another way to connect with people. You might do that under the guise of, finding out more about the organization or having an informational discussion. I'm not sure if that person, if there are jobs posted that you're actively looking at, or if it's just in general, you want to make sure that you're connected with those people. Absolutely. That's what LinkedIn is great for. Maybe you might have to do it you might have to reach out a couple times, because sometimes people are a little bit slow to respond. But yes, absolutely. You could reach out to a hiring manager. In fact, I've seen in some cases, and maybe you guys have seen this too, when jobs are posted on LinkedIn, sometimes it'll have the hiring manager or the person who posted it, somebody in their HR group, listed as the person who posted it, and they'll actually welcome those kinds of connections.
Ellen asks, if someone is currently not working, what do you recommend we put in the headliner for LinkedIn?
It's okay that it's not your current job title or your past job title. What we want that headline to say is more about you and your skills and what you have to offer. So in my headline, I say resume writer and job search strategist. That's who I am. If you are a project manager, if you are somebody that works in biotech, I'm making this up, but you could write project manager, biotech, and something else. Like, the idea is it's not necessarily your job title, which might just be manager, right? That's a little too generic. You want to make sure that you have more built in there that tells more about what your skills are and your experience, so that you are somebody who is found if they're looking for something like that. Like, for example, I have a client that I'm working with right now who does digital transformation for large organizations, like big, huge companies. So his headline might say digital transformation leader, global corporate expert, something like that. You see where I'm going with this, where it gives a flavor of all these things that you are capable of and what you're looking for. So it's a little bit of a word play.
So if anyone has any other questions for Elizabeth, you can get them into the chat now. We can also take questions via audio or video. We have about 7 minutes left. So last call for questions. Ellen says, thank you very much, Elizabeth.
I see Linda said something about endorsements of skills being different from recommendations. Can I answer that?
Sure. Was that sent directly to you? I don't see it.
Oh, it's directly to me. Yep.
There you go.
Sorry, I'm seeing that.
Okay.
Linda, thank you for that question. And you're absolutely right. The endorsements are people that people that you're connected with in your network are basically saying, yep, I worked with Linda, and I can attest to her communication ability. So I'm going to endorse her for that. Recommendations are written almost like it's not a reference, but it's a paragraph that someone's writing about working with you. So totally different things, two completely different things. Yes.
Patricia says, if you're an experienced job seeker, should you list every job from early in your career? I've heard mixed advice on this. Some say leaving off positions except for the most recent jobs, even if the early career work is impressive.
And there's mixed advice. So I'm a firm believer in putting everything on there, even if I don't explain some of the early roles, because I want my career to speak for itself in total. Some of my early roles in my career, in all of our careers, they made up who we are today. We might not need to go into a huge amount of detail about what we did at those jobs, but if they are part of what our career sort of story and narrative is, then I actually prefer to leave them on. It's kind of a little bit the same technique we use for in the resume world, where some of the older roles, we might not explain all of the responsibilities in full detail. We might just put the name of the company and the title that you held while you were there and the dates, and then call it a day. So it's a bit of a personal preference. If you want to include all your information, I'm a big fan of sort of having all of our experience reflected on LinkedIn, even if we're not explaining all of it, because I think it does contribute to your whole career narrative.
Yeah, I've heard it both ways as well.
Yep.
Anthony asks, should we write posts on our LinkedIn account? Does that make any difference?
So it's a great question, Anthony. And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier with visibility. So if you post things to your LinkedIn account, maybe it's something that you're interested in that's got a business angle that has to do with the industry you're in, or even if you like somebody else's post, or you share a piece of information that you saw in somebody else's post, all of that contributes to your visibility on LinkedIn. And so, if you're somebody that has the appetite to do that, then that's absolutely fine. If you're somebody that just wants to research things on LinkedIn and not necessarily have that much visibility, that's also fine. My point about today's presentation is making sure that your profile is updated and as strong as it can be, so that if you choose to do either of those activities and people are coming to look at your profile, that it is giving them the best impression that it can.
All right. So again, I don't see any other questions. Elizabeth, you might want to just double check you weren't sent any more directly. Yeah. But
nope.
Okay, so I think that, and we're almost at okay, here a last question goes to Laura. Right, and this is a good point. So if my resume should only go back 10 to 15 years and LinkedIn and resumes should match, isn't there a risk?
It's another great question. Part of the reason why resumes only go back 10 or 15 years is because we're also constrained to 2 pages. So we're trying to tell the best parts of our story in a compressed space, right? In not as much space. So with LinkedIn, because it's a social media platform and it's web-based, we have more room. I'm not saying we need to go on and about all these different details that might not necessarily be as important in our careers today. But there's certainly no harm in including those early roles. If you don't want to do it and you want your resume to match exactly, that's up to you. That's absolutely fine. But if you're thinking, geez, some of these early roles, even though I can't fit them on my resume, they actually were kind of interesting, and I'd like to make sure that they stay on my LinkedIn profile, because that keeps your connections with those people at those companies, right? And it gives you, again, that additional visibility because your profile is linked to that company. So there are a few reasons why you might want to include them, but it's generally understood that on our resumes we're constrained to a shorter amount of space, but on LinkedIn we have a little bit more space to work with. We have a lot more space to work with because you can kind of put as many roles as you'd like.
And then Lauren points out that one of the other drawbacks to listing all your previous jobs is it kind of may give a hint towards your age.
Yep.
Right? Yeah.
And that's something that you have to decide.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. So folks, I think we will wrap it there. Let's give Elizabeth a big virtual round of applause. Look for an email from me later today with a link to this recording, a link to a handout, and a link to a feedback survey. We're off the next 2 weeks due to the holidays. We will be back on Monday, what is it, January 9th. And there'll be information on all our January, February, and March meetings coming at you pretty soon. So I want to thank you all so much. Elizabeth, do you have any last words for the group?
No, I want to say thank you to everybody though for attending. Thank you for the wonderful questions. Don't hesitate if you have any other questions as you're working on your profile to shoot me a note. I'm always happy to answer anything about LinkedIn or resumes or about your job search in general. And I wish everybody good luck and happy holidays.
Yes, excellent. Yes, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, everyone. Hope you all have a great couple of weeks here.
Hope you feel
Thanks
better,
again.
Robert.
Thank you. All right, bye-bye.